Hey, welcome. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating case study about local power. It all kicked off with a regional plan that had this, kind of ominous name, 750. It's a great story about how one community managed to push back just by asking one single, really powerful question. So let's get right into it.
But let's start with a big picture question for you. What actually happens when the future of your town, your own neighborhood, is being decided by people who don't even live there? It's a question that really sets the scene perfectly for the story we're about to unpack. All right, so our story begins down in Southeast Florida with a program called 750. I know, it sounds more like the title of a sci-fi movie, but it was a very real plan that ended up sparking this incredible local movement. So, what in the world does 750 even mean? Well, the name itself tells you pretty much everything you need to know about its ambition. It actually stood for control of 7 counties within 50 years. I mean, wow, that's a bold title for a planning program, right? And it immediately signals just how huge this thing was supposed to be. So on paper, the goal was to create this one big, unified regional framework. The program was partnered up with federal agencies like HUD and the EPA, and it was designed to basically reorganize everything, housing, transportation, zoning decisions, across a massive 7-county area. And here's the key to how it worked. The whole mechanism was based on this gradual shift of power. Decisions that used to be made by, say, your local town council would slowly but surely be handed over to these regional bodies, all guided by the conditions attached to federal grants.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds kind of dry, right? Just a bunch of boring administrative planning. But when local residents started to actually dig into the details, they found some proposals that really made them concerned. So tucked away inside this 750 framework were things like centralized rezoning, housing redistribution formulas, and even density quotas for their towns. There was talk about sharing the tax base and massive redevelopment plans that would be dictated by these regional authorities. And a huge piece of the puzzle was that compliance was tied to grant money.
And here it is. This is the detail that really lit the fuse. All of these potentially massive, life-changing plans for their communities, they were all being proposed without a direct public vote. No referendum. So this is where the story takes a turn. Faced with this massive, sweeping regional plan, the citizens didn't get bogged down in, complex legal debates. Instead, they rallied around one simple, decisive question. They asked themselves, and more importantly, they asked their elected officials something so simple it was brilliant. Do we have to accept this? And as it turns out, the answer was a resounding no. What's really remarkable is just how straightforward their strategy was. It wasn't some complex secret plan. They just got organized, they did their homework, and educated their own local officials on what the plan really meant. They showed up to the meetings, and crucially, they demanded a recorded on-the-record vote. And would you look at the result of that simple strategy? It was a slam dunk. Indian River County voted no. The city of Vero Beach, they voted no. Indian River Shores, a firm no. Even the local school board officially opted out. In their community, the whole program just collapsed. So you have to wonder, right? What happened after they rejected the whole plan and all the federal money that came with it? What were the big bad consequences? Zero. Zilch. Nada. There were no penalties, no retaliation. The second they said no, the obligation was gone. So why does this story from the past matter so much for all of us today, no matter where we live? Well, because the ideas and the structures behind it are still very much in play, they often just go by different names now. Just look at this comparison. The language has been updated, for sure, but the concepts are strikingly similar. What they called housing redistribution formulas back then, we now often hear called regional housing allocations. Mass transit-oriented redevelopment is now just transit-oriented development. The basic idea of grant-conditioned compliance, it's still the same game. And this brings us to an absolutely critical distinction we all need to understand. Many of these big regional plans are presented as frameworks, not mandates. And that difference means everything. See, a framework is just an optional structure. It only gets any real power, it only becomes binding if a local community voluntarily chooses to accept it. So the big lesson from the whole 750 story is that our local governments, and the citizens who keep them accountable, still hold the ultimate authority. That fundamental right to just say no is completely intact, but it only works if people know they have that right and are willing to stand up and use it.
It really all comes down to this simple but powerful equation from our source material. No consent equals no obligation. Without that local yes vote, without that active, willing acceptance, these big regional frameworks are really just suggestions on a piece of paper.
And that leaves us all with one final question to think about. Because this story, it isn't just about Florida. It's about the fundamental power of local consent everywhere. So how are these big planning decisions really being made where you live? It's definitely a question worth asking.